Hello, my name is Saterstrom. Welcome to my studio. I'd like to thank the Mississippi Museum of Art for inviting me to take part in the Makers and Their Spaces series. Also for supporting the protests in the fight for racial justice and equality in Mississippi. And also more generally for this series and others for being a source of positivity during the pandemic. It all helps. So, you want to see my space? My studio is very wooden, like a upturned Viking ship. There's my flat file that holds drawings and scraps of paper. There's my drafting table on which I draw and look at objects. There's our children's little encampment in the corner where they like to come and paint and draw while I work. And in front of the window here is where I do my oil painting, right there. I think of the studio as a space not just for painting, but for researching and learning and trying to understand often things that are hard to understand or maybe even impossible to understand. You know, there's nothing mystical about being a painter. I always reject that idea that it's somehow a magical process. Painting, actually moving the paint around, it can be fun and enjoyable. It can be really frustrating and grueling, and it can be tedious and repetitive, and just like everything else, it can be all those things. Anything can be those things. You follow your curiosity from one thought or question to another and try to make decisions along the way about what's worth following, where your interest lies. And, it often isn't about paint. For me, it might be about history or memory or stories or family or place. And, that I'm a painter, of course, and I start painting. But it's not actually the best medium for some of those things. Storytelling is better done with words or with some sort of medium of duration. And so a lot of my paintings try to kind of emulate film maybe or prose. Even though I spent a lot of years away from Mississippi, I often found myself painting from images of Mississippi and working with material based on my family history in Mississippi. A few years ago, I started painting more directly about my family, especially around the Natchez area, who were enthusiastic enslavers for much of the 19th century. And so I wanted to dig into that material. It was very uncomfortable to do, but it was a great study for me in what paint maybe can and can't do to help, with understanding things that are difficult to understand and wrestle with material that's hard to wrestle with. So I'm painting you and Gus on this one, Pippi?
What?
Do you see I'm painting you and Gus on this one?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're on that part. It goes like this. The question of what to paint is always the most pressing for me. I mean, I admire painters who don't need that, who can just like pick up a brush and start painting. But for me, if I don't have some kind of subject matter, it's like a pilot light, you know. If you don't have that, it's hard to light the stove, you know. But once I know what I'm going to paint, or I think I know what I'm going to paint about, then how to paint it starts to become clear one step at a time after that. My great-grandfather was an optometrist, and he disappeared in 1925. All we knew was that he died 43 years later at the Mississippi State Hospital in Whitfield. But he was written out so completely from the family story that I've always been kind of haunted by his absence. For the last 2 years, the state librarian, Stephen Parks, has been helping me find any information that's in public record throughout the state, in courthouses, chancery clerk's offices, legal records, hospital files, anything that can help me sort of flesh out what happened to him. And I've been painting hundreds of paintings directly from photographs and stories about his life and his wife Ethel and all the people around them in Natchez and Vicksburg, and immersed myself in that world. When thinking about spaces, of course, I'm in my space in Nashville in the 21st century, but while I'm working, I'm very much in the space of 1920s in Southwest Mississippi. In all these artifacts left behind, you can see traces of the complications of class and race and mental illness and compassion and judgment and silence and sweetness and all these things. And they're all worth painting about if you can somehow make something happen. I'm so grateful for the space of the studio, and even to be able to paint for a living is a real gift. I never take it for granted. And I'm very grateful because, frankly, there's not a lot that I'm qualified to do other than this.
I certainly drew a tree, but then I realized the green, I didn't have enough, the green was all wrong for the leaves, so I had to make it red.
Yeah, well, but then it says in that bubble, what does it say? Yeah, you wrote fall. I think that's because the leaves were red.
Oh,
So you changed it to the fall.
right.